Deep in the high desert of eastern Oregon, beneath layers of ancient volcanic ash and extinct animal bones, archaeologists have stumbled upon something that could rewrite the entire history of human civilization on this continent. And the scientific community still cannot quite believe what they are looking at. A discovery so significant, so challenging to conventional wisdom, that it has forced archaeologists around the world to reconsider everything they thought they understood about when and how humans first arrived in the Americas. For more than a century, we believed we had the answer to one of humanity's greatest mysteries. When did people first arrive in North America? The answer seems straightforward. Around 13,000 years ago, a culture known as the Clovis people crossed from Asia into North America by traveling through an ice-free corridor in present-day Canada. They were hardy hunters, equipped with distinctive spear, points, and sophisticated tools. They spread across the continent rapidly, eventually populating both North and South America. This theory, known as the Clovis first hypothesis, became so dominant in archaeological circles that questioning it was almost heretical. Scientists built entire careers. Now, a discovery in Oregon has shattered that certainty completely. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter, located outside the small town of Riley in Harney County, has revealed evidence of human occupation dating back not 13,000 years, but 18,250 years before present. That is a difference of over 5,000 years. To put that enormous gap in perspective, that span is longer than the entire duration of recorded human history. That is longer than the existence of cities, of writing, of civilization as we know it. It is a gap so profound that it demands we reconsider fundamentally everything we thought we knew about how humans colonized the Americas and when they accomplished this remarkable feat. The story of this discovery begins with a man named Dr. Patrick O'Grady, an archaeologist with the University of Oregon's Museum of Natural and Cultural History. O'Grady is not the type of scientist who makes dramatic announcements from podiums or seeks media attention and accolades. Instead, he is a meticulous, patient researcher who has spent the last decade and a half methodically excavating a small rock shelter in one of the most remote and unforgiving landscapes in all of America. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter itself is nothing spectacular to look at on casual observation. It is a shallow overhang in a basalt rim, roughly 3 meters deep and 20 meters long, situated in the vast sagebrush desert of eastern Oregon. A permanent stream once ran nearby, making it an attractive location for ancient hunters seeking shelter, water, and protection from the elements. When O'Grady and his team from the University of Oregon began their systematic excavations in 2011, they had no idea they were about to make one of the most important archaeological discoveries of their generation. Working under an official partnership agreement with the Bureau of Land Management, they started the painstaking work of carefully removing soil, layer by layer, documenting every artifact, every fragment of bone, every flake of stone they encountered. Archaeology, as any archaeologist will tell you, is not a glamorous profession. It involves sore knees, dirt screens, tiny fragments of stone, notes written in dusty field books, seasons passing with often nothing remarkable to show for the effort. But at Rimrock Draw, extraordinary patience would eventually be rewarded with discoveries that would reshape our understanding of human history. In 2012, a decade into their work, O'Grady's team made a discovery that would prove absolutely significant. They uncovered a line of volcanic ash, white, thin, ancient. This ash had come from an eruption of Mount St. Helens that occurred thousands of years before anyone had even given that mountain a proper name. When volcanoes erupt violently, they scatter ash across enormous distances. This particular layer of Mount St. Below this ancient ash layer, the team discovered something extraordinary and unexpected: fragments of tooth enamel from extinct animals. These were not the bones of animals that roamed the Oregon high desert in recent times. These were the remains of creatures from the Pleistocene era, from the Ice Age itself. The teeth belonged to ancient camels and bison, species that have been extinct in North America for thousands of years. The presence of these Ice Age animals was remarkable in itself, but more importantly, beneath this ash layer, even deeper in the excavation, the team found stone tools, 2 finely crafted orange agate scrapers. One of them, discovered in 2012, still bore traces of bison blood residue, suggesting it had been used to butcher an animal. Another scraper, buried even deeper, was found in 2015, positioned in stratigraphic layers clearly below the volcanic ash. This is where the story becomes truly remarkable and scientifically significant. In archaeology, stratigraphy is everything. Stratigraphy is the study of layers and their relationships. Deeper layers are generally older than the layers above them. This principle is fundamental to archaeological science. If you find an artifact in a layer that sits below a dated volcanic ash layer that is 15,000 years old, then that artifact must be older than 15,000 years. It is a simple principle, but it is incredibly powerful and reliable. The fact that these tools and animal teeth were positioned beneath an ash layer dated to over 15,000 years suggested something revolutionary. Humans had been at this site, using these tools, butchering these animals before the Mount St. Helens eruption occurred. But O'Grady and his team needed concrete dates. They needed to know exactly how old these artifacts truly were with precision. For this crucial work, they turned to radiocarbon dating, one of the most reliable tools in an archaeologist's arsenal. Radiocarbon dating works by measuring the decay of carbon-14, a radioactive isotope that exists in all living things. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon-14, and the existing carbon-14 in its body begins to decay at a predictable rate. By measuring how much carbon-14 remains in a sample, scientists can calculate with reasonable precision how long ago that organism died. O'Grady sent samples of the tooth enamel to 2 leading radiocarbon dating specialists who have earned international reputations for their careful work. Dr. Thomas W. Stafford Jr. of Stafford Research and Dr. John Southan of the University of California, Irvine, are among the most respected radiocarbon analysts in the world. These are not scientists who would risk their reputations on sloppy methodology or questionable conclusions. These are meticulous researchers who have spent careers perfecting their techniques. When they analyzed the tooth enamel samples from the Rimrock Draw rock shelter, they received results that would have made most scientists pause and double-check their work. The initial analysis, conducted in 2018, yielded a date of approximately 18,000 years before present. When O'Grady's team resubmitted samples for additional testing in 2023, confirming their original work, the results were confirmed again. The camel and bison teeth were dated to 18,250 years ago, or 14,900 radiocarbon years before present. This was not a minor discrepancy from previous understanding. This was revolutionary. This was 5,000 years older than the Clovis culture was supposed to be. This pushed human occupation in North America back into a period that many archaeologists thought was impossible or unreachable. O'Grady himself was genuinely stunned by the results of this analysis. He later remarked, "The identification of a 15,000-year-old volcanic ash was a shock. Then Tom's 18,000-year-old dates on the enamel with stone tools and flakes below were even more startling." But what impressed O'Grady most was not just the individual dates themselves, but the consistency of the findings over time. Over more than a decade of excavation, his team had found multiple pieces of evidence all pointing to the same conclusion. They were not finding isolated anomalies that could be easily dismissed. They were finding a pattern, a coherent story written in stone and bone and ash. The implications of this discovery are profound and far-reaching. For nearly a century, the Clovis first hypothesis had dominated American archaeology like a monolith. The Clovis people, characterized by their distinctive fluted projectile points, known as Clovis points, were believed to represent the first and only successful colonization of the Americas. According to the traditional theory, these people migrated from Siberia to Alaska across a land bridge called Beringia, which connected present-day Russia and Alaska during the last ice age. From there, they moved through a narrow corridor of ice-free land in what is now Canada, eventually reaching the continental interior. Once they entered what is now the United States, they rapidly spread throughout North and South America, eventually populating the entire Western Hemisphere. This theory was so dominant that it became embedded deep in popular consciousness and academic culture. It was taught in schools across America. It was presented in museums as established fact. It was the foundation upon which an entire generation of archaeologists built their understanding of human history in the Americas. To challenge it was to risk professional ridicule and rejection from the established academic community. But in recent decades, evidence began accumulating that contradicted the Clovis first model. Sites like Meadowcroft, Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania, and Cooper's Ferry in Idaho revealed evidence of human occupation dating to around 16,000 years ago. These discoveries were controversial, and many archaeologists dismissed them as anomalies or argued that the dating methods were flawed or contaminated. But now, with Rimrock Draw pushing the timeline back even further, it became impossible to ignore the implications. The presence of people in Oregon 18,000 years ago raises profound questions about how they got there. The ice-free corridor through Canada, which was the primary route proposed by the Clovis first model, may not have been passable at that time. Some researchers have proposed alternative routes, including fascinating coastal migration theories. Perhaps early humans arrived by boat, traveling along the Pacific coast, using the resources of the ocean to sustain themselves as they made their way from Asia to the Americas. This coastal migration theory is becoming increasingly popular among archaeologists, particularly given the discovery of pre-Clovis sites in the Pacific Northwest region. But the Rimrock Draw discovery tells us something else very important. It tells us that early humans in North America were not simply primitive wanderers, subsisting on whatever they could find in their environment. The tools recovered at Rimrock Draw were sophisticated and well-crafted. The orange agate scrapers were carefully worked and shaped with skill and precision. They were effective tools, designed with purpose and clear intent. The fact that one of them retained traces of bison blood suggests that these early hunters were successfully pursuing large game animals, demonstrating hunting prowess that would be matched by their Clovis descendants thousands of years later. These were not desperate people struggling to survive in a hostile landscape. These were skilled, adaptable humans who had learned to thrive in their environment. The site itself reveals more about daily life and subsistence patterns in this remote period of human history. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter served as a shelter, providing protection from the harsh, high desert weather, from wind and rain and the intense sun. A permanent stream ran nearby, providing reliable water. The presence of multiple animal teeth and stone tools suggests that the site was used repeatedly over time, not just as a temporary camp, but as a place where hunters returned regularly to conduct their business. They would butcher the animals they had killed, processing meat and hides using their stone tools. They may have cached food here or rested between hunts. The site tells a story of people who understood their landscape intimately, who knew where game animals congregated in different seasons, and who had developed sophisticated strategies for successfully hunting them. The Bureau of Land Management, which manages the land where the Rimrock Draw rock shelter is located, recognized the significance of O'Grady's findings. Heather Ulrich, the BLM's Oregon and Washington archaeology lead, stated, "This is a very exciting development for the archaeological community. Thanks to the partnership with Dr. O'Grady and the university, these new dates push our archaeological knowledge of human occupation in North America even farther, perhaps the oldest yet." The BLM has committed to protecting the site and supporting continued research and investigation. However, not all archaeologists have embraced the Rimrock Draw findings with unbridled enthusiasm. Some have raised legitimate questions and concerns about the interpretation of the evidence. One concern involves the possibility of vertical displacement. Could the stone tools have somehow migrated downward through the soil layers, ending up deeper than they actually should be based on when they were used? This is not an unreasonable concern to raise. Soil movement does occur, and artifacts can shift position over thousands of years due to various geological and biological processes. However, the careful stratigraphic positioning of the artifacts, combined with their location beneath a dated volcanic ash layer, makes this explanation seem unlikely and unsupported. Another concern involves the possibility of contamination in the radiocarbon dating process. Could environmental factors have influenced the results and produced anomalously old dates? Could minerals in the soil have affected the age of the samples? O'Grady's team anticipated these questions and took extensive precautions to minimize the possibility of contamination. The tooth enamel samples were carefully selected and thoroughly cleaned before analysis. The dating was conducted by some of the most respected radiocarbon laboratories in the world. The results were consistent across multiple analyses conducted years apart. While it is always theoretically possible that unforeseen factors influenced the dating, the evidence for contamination seems weak and unconvincing. Some archaeologists have expressed skepticism about the gap between the supposed 18,000-year-old occupation at Rimrock Draw and the next evidence of human activity at the site. The team found extensive evidence of occupation dating to around 9,000 years ago, when western-stemmed projectile points became common in the region. This creates a gap of 9,000 years. If people were using the Rimrock Draw shelter 18,000 years ago, why don't we see evidence of continuous or regular use during the intervening millennia? O'Grady himself has acknowledged this puzzle and taken it seriously, noting that there may have been changes in climate or prey animal distribution that made the site less attractive for a while. There may have been periods when it was simply not worth the effort to travel to this location. Despite these questions and concerns raised by skeptical researchers, the overwhelming consensus in the archaeological community has shifted toward accepting that Rimrock Draw represents genuine evidence of human occupation dating to 18,000 years ago. Other discoveries in the region have supported this conclusion and provided corroborating evidence. The Paisley Caves and Conley Caves, both affiliated with the University of Oregon, have also yielded pre-Clovis evidence and artifacts. These discoveries collectively suggest that the Pacific Northwest was inhabited by humans thousands of years before the rise of the Clovis culture ever occurred. O'Grady himself remains measured and thoughtful about the implications of his discovery. He has acknowledged the resistance some archaeologists have shown to pre-Clovis evidence, noting that there are still many people in the field who are reluctant to accept data that contradicts the traditional narrative. He has said, "There's a lot of people who don't want to believe that there's anything older than Clovis. And it's something that's pervasive in archaeology. There's just a lot of people that won't accept the new data. How do you argue with that?" The sentiment reveals the deep conservatism that exists within academic archaeology, a reluctance to abandon long-held theories even in the face of mounting evidence. Found animal teeth with the same dates. They have documented their findings meticulously, following proper archaeological protocols and best practices. As O'Grady has noted, It's not so much that we have such old dates, but that we're getting consistent results. This site is beautiful in that sense because for the past 11 years, we're actually seeing something that's preserved through time that dates from about 7,000 years back to 18,000 years, and that's magic. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond simply revising a date. It forces us to reconsider fundamental questions about human migration and settlement in the Americas. It suggests that the colonization of the Americas was not a simple, linear process, but rather a complex story involving multiple waves of migration, possibly via multiple routes and at different times. It indicates that early Americans were not unsophisticated or primitive, but rather possessed the technological knowledge and adaptive capacity to thrive in diverse environments, ranging from high deserts to Pacific coastlines. The discovery also has profound implications for our understanding of human capability and adaptability as a species. The people who occupied the Rimrock Draw shelter 18,000 years ago were doing so during the height of the last ice age. The global climate was much colder than today. Sea levels were lower, revealing land areas that are now underwater. The landscape was different, with megafauna roaming that are now extinct. Yet despite these harsh and unfamiliar conditions, humans had managed to reach and settle in North America. They had developed hunting strategies effective enough to take down large Ice Age mammals like camels and ancient bison. They had created tools sophisticated enough to leave traces of their success written in blood residue on stone scrapers. This speaks to the remarkable ingenuity and adaptability of our species. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter discovery also raises questions about how many other pre-Clovis sites might be out there, simply waiting to be found by patient archaeologists. If humans were in Oregon 18,000 years ago, they must have been in other places too. There may be dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of pre-Clovis archaeological sites scattered across North America, hidden beneath soil layers, destroyed by erosion, or simply not yet recognized for their significance by researchers. Each new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that archaeologists are only beginning to assemble. As of 2026, research at Rimrock Draw continues with ongoing commitment. Dr. O'Grady has announced that the 2024 field season would be the final archaeology field school at the site, but the work is far from finished and complete. Additional testing of other camel and bison tooth fragments is ongoing. Archaeologists and archaeobotanists are studying plant remains recovered from ancient cooking fires, which could provide more information about diet and subsistence strategies. The University of Oregon and the Bureau of Land Management remain committed to completing this important research and preserving the findings. The reactions from the broader scientific community have been largely positive, though understandably measured and cautious. The discovery has been presented at major archaeological conferences and published in peer-reviewed journals. Other archaeologists have examined the evidence and generally found it compelling and well supported. While some skeptics remain, the default position in the field has shifted considerably. Pre-Clovis occupation of the Americas is no longer considered fringe science. It is now mainstream archaeology. One of the most interesting aspects of the Rimrock Draw discovery is how it illustrates the self-correcting nature of science itself. For decades, the Clovis first hypothesis was treated as essentially unquestionable. But as new evidence accumulated from multiple independent research projects, the scientific community gradually shifted its understanding. This is science working as it should. Theories are tested, evidence is examined critically, and when new data conflicts with established models, the models are revised. It may have taken longer than some would have wished, but ultimately the process worked. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter is now recognized as one of the most important archaeological sites in North America. It ranks alongside places like Monteverde in Chile and the Bluefish Caves in Yukon Territory as a site that fundamentally challenges our understanding of when humans first arrived in the Americas. Young archaeologists conducting their doctoral research cite it in their dissertations. Museums have updated their exhibits to reflect the new chronology. Textbooks are slowly being revised to acknowledge the pre-Clovis presence in North America. The discovery that O'Grady and his team made in that remote Oregon desert has rippled outward, transforming our understanding of human history. The discovery at Rimrock Draw also forces us to rethink the capabilities of Ice Age humans. These were not people living at the edge of survival, struggling to eke out existence. These were sophisticated, adaptable humans who had mastered the challenges of one of the harshest environments on Earth. The fact that they could successfully hunt large, powerful animals like bison and camels speaks volumes about their hunting prowess and their understanding of animal behavior and ecological relationships. They had developed techniques, strategies, and social organization sophisticated enough to take down animals that weighed thousands of pounds. Furthermore, the presence of multiple stone tools at the site, all carefully crafted from high-quality materials like orange agate, suggests that these people understood the properties of different stone types and how to work them. They could identify which stones would fracture in predictable ways to create sharp edges. They could shape stone into functional tools with precision and care. This requires knowledge, practice, and transmission of information across generations. This is not the work of primitive, unsophisticated people. This is the work of intelligent beings who had accumulated knowledge about their world and how to manipulate it. The implications for understanding human cognition are also significant. The stone tools at Rimrock Draw demonstrate abstract thinking and planning. The people who made these tools were not simply reacting to immediate needs. They were planning ahead, anticipating future needs, and creating tools suitable for those anticipated tasks. This requires a level of cognitive sophistication that many researchers would have associated with much more recent human populations. Looking to the future, there are many questions that remain unanswered about the people who occupied Rimrock Draw 18,000 years ago. Were they part of a larger population, or does the site represent an isolated settlement? How did they survive the harsh climate of the Ice Age with its extreme cold and unpredictable weather patterns? What other tools and technologies did they possess that have not yet been recovered or preserved? Did they eventually become the ancestors of later populations, or were they replaced by newcomers in subsequent waves of migration? These questions will likely occupy archaeologists for years to come as they continue their research. The question of multiple migrations is particularly intriguing. If humans were already in North America 18,000 years ago, did the Clovis people represent a second wave of migration? Were there subsequent waves after that? Did different populations intermix? Did some populations go extinct while others survived and flourished? These are the kinds of complex population dynamics that archaeologists are beginning to explore. The traditional model of a single, simple migration is clearly inadequate. We need a more sophisticated model that accounts for multiple migrations, multiple routes, and complex population interactions. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter is more than just a collection of artifacts and dates. It is a window into the deep past, a place where we can glimpse the lives of our ancestors who ventured into an unknown continent and learned to thrive there. Every stone tool, every bone fragment, every layer of volcanic ash tells a story worth understanding. And as archaeologists continue to read these stories written in earth and stone, they are writing a new chapter in the history of human civilization. The story they are uncovering is more complex, more nuanced, and far more fascinating than the simple narrative of the Clovis first hypothesis ever was. The significance of this discovery also extends into the realm of Indigenous history and cultural identity. Native American peoples have long maintained oral traditions and cultural memories extending back thousands of years. Many Indigenous nations have always believed their ancestors arrived in the Americas far earlier than the Clovis first hypothesis suggested. The Rimrock Draw. Discovery validates the traditional knowledge and oral histories of Native American peoples. For too long, Western science dismissed Indigenous historical accounts as mere legend. The discovery at Rimrock Draw suggests such dismissiveness was unwarranted. The people of the Pacific Northwest have long maintained that their peoples occupied this region for an extremely long time, and archaeology now provides physical evidence supporting these traditions. The broader significance of the Rimrock Draw discovery cannot be overstated. This is not just an academic matter of interest only to archaeologists and historians. This discovery reshapes our fundamental understanding of human achievement and capability. It demonstrates that modern humans possess the ingenuity, courage, and adaptability to explore and settle in completely unknown territories under extraordinarily challenging conditions. These were not people who migrated by accident or stumbled upon the Americas by chance. These were purposeful explorers who deliberately ventured into new lands and successfully adapted to new environments. The discovery also has implications for how we think about human accomplishment across time. The tools recovered at Rimrock Draw, dating to 18,000 years ago, demonstrate that human technological and cognitive capabilities were essentially modern even at that distant time. The brains of these Ice Age humans were not fundamentally different from our brains today. They had the same capacity for complex thought, planning, social organization, and cultural transmission. The differences between Ice Age humans and modern humans are not differences of capability, but differences of accumulated knowledge and technology passed down across generations. The Rimrock Draw rock shelter discovery in Oregon has changed everything. It has changed how we understand human migration to the Americas. It has changed how we think about the capabilities of Ice Age humans. It has changed how we value Indigenous historical knowledge and oral traditions. And it has changed the trajectory of American archaeology itself. The discovery that Dr. O'Grady and his team made in that remote Oregon desert has rippled outward, transforming our understanding not just of human history in the Americas, but of human history itself. The implications will continue to unfold for generations to come as researchers continue to study this remarkable site and as new discoveries inevitably follow. The story of Rimrock Draw is the story of human ingenuity, determination, and the endless quest to understand our own past.